We're going to be get personal now, get into our own class. Is Aurora? Where'd he go? Can you tell us, how did you do this? Get by me.
I'll tell you a little bit about Aurora. My name's Andrew Caulfels. I was the skipper of Aurora. This is John Priestley. He's our navigator. A little bit about our program. We're a Tartan 41, one of those old slow boats normally. Luckily, it goes to windward very, very well and does pretty well in heavy weather. And so we thought that this might be our lucky year to try to catch Sinn Féin, figuring that it might not be a Cal 40 type weather. We were a little bit disappointed. They really did very, very well in the last stretch. This is our third year doing this, roughly the same crew. And I would say that it's been a process of going to school, and we're slowly putting layers of this program together. And we thought we almost had it, but we ran out of sails sort of in the last leg. Let me introduce John, who can tell you a little bit more about the technical parts of the route, which aren't too dissimilar from some of the others. John?
Yeah, thanks. Can everyone see this screen and hear me? Yes, no? It was pretty hard for me to see in the back. Can I get over to that? Wow, can anyone see that at all? All right. I don't have a pointer. I'll see if I can pick this up. Overall, we had a very similar track to what you've heard described. We actually laid out our strategy the night before the race. It was based on what we were looking at for the weather files, fundamentally, and the current secondarily. The current is not changing as much. Oh, thank you. The overall principle of our strategy was to get west, and that was based on what the wind was going to be doing in the latter stages of the race. We also had the forecast of a strong southerly in the midsection of the race, so we were looking at where that would occur for our boat. As Andrew said, Aurora goes upwind like crazy, so we weren't afraid to use that. And but we set ourselves up to edge over to the west, so that in the latter stages of the race, when it came to southwest, we wouldn't be having to beat. And as it turned out, that's exactly what played out for us. We were able to work far enough west that we never came hard on the wind for the last 2 days, and we're making some very good speeds. At the point of the upper eddy, our track, pretty hard for me to see with the glare, but our track was pretty much aiming for a spot about 130 on the dial. We got into about a knot of favorable current. At one point I said, I think we should take a hitch. And one of the aspects about navigating on our boat that I think is really fundamental to what worked for us is that there are other people on board who are very capable navigators. Andrew has really taken a central role in working on the technology end. I've done the race many more times, so I sort of sit back and just try to apply my experience and general intuition. My sense was we should tack to get into the eddy a little further, and also to stick with our strategy of pushing to the west. Andrew said, no, that doesn't make any sense. That'll take us away from Bermuda. So I quieted down. We kept sailing for a bit, and about an hour or so later, he said, I think we should take a hitch. And as it turned out, in hindsight, being able to look at our track, it was an excellent move for us, because our position relative to that eddy was that instead of coming in on port tack against the current, we had actually dug into it far enough we were getting favorable boost towards Bermuda. When we tacked, what happened is we were getting swept towards Bermuda. So our tacking angles were very open and broad. We went for a short distance, dug in. We found 3.5 knots. We tacked back to starboard. We had 3.5 knots that were taking us towards Bermuda for at least 8 hours. So that was an excellent push for us. And our course through that eddy was actually arcing very slightly towards the west, because that's what the wind was allowing us to do. It was also keeping us in the hot water. So when we looked at it in hindsight, we realized we had found a really hot patch of water. We were looking at temperature, and we just got lucky in terms of finding that right band of current and then holding it all the way. Yes? That was 78, guys, don't you think? 78 degrees. So it was real, it was substantial. It was not quite Gulfstream temperatures, but we knew that we were in it, and the flow and the current readings we were getting were correlating very well. When we came out of the eddy, the course that we had decided to take was entering the Gulf Stream very far west. So we actually tacked to port for a bit. We entered the stream in a position that we were looking at our exit point of the stream in terms of how we played that. So we did get some favorable current, probably not as much as I would have expected. There's one little glitch marked as oops. Incidentally, you probably recognize we're only showing the top half of the course here. This for us is really the whole race, is playing the first half of the course. The lower half was aiming for Bermuda. I could talk about that briefly. See if I can see this. Here's the, yeah. Can everyone see this? So I was talking about earlier, the hitch that we took to port was lower, so that rather than coming in against the current, we were down here somewhere. We were just getting swept towards Bermuda because we were already into favorable currents. Rode the warm eddy around, crossed as quickly as we could. This little jog, it's not identical, but this little jog is similar to what we marked as oops on our chart, which was that we were, as I said, trying to get across the stream. We went over onto port tack. We found 2 knots of current running opposite in the direction that we expected. In other words, it was flowing from east to west. And we had imagined this entire flow was sliding across. So at that point, we were scratching our heads. We were recording the current every minute for an hour, just trying to figure out what were we experiencing. And this seemed like an anomaly to us. And we thought we're in some little funny countercurrent, a little eddy, who knows what. We finally said, the reason we didn't tack and head towards Bermuda is we thought if we tack and we're going into 2 knots of current, we're just going to be sailing against that for an interminable period of time. So I think as it turned out, we decided to tack back at a good moment, and that we tacked and that current seemed to have disappeared, and we exited the stream fairly far west. In fact, I think we measured about 110 miles west of Rumline. And I think we were the furthest west boat, perhaps, in the class, give or take. Incidentally, about Rumline, a couple of people asked how far off the Rumline you go. One of the things I like to talk about when I'm navigating is the Rumline doesn't exist. You're on the boat, you're sailing from feature to feature, and you're looking at the weather, and your course to Bermuda is wherever you are at that moment. So for me, it doesn't matter whether it's 70, 90, 110, or 300 miles, whatever's fastest. So I try to just pretend the Rumline doesn't exist and look at where we want to go to get there most rapidly. The lower portion of the course, the features were the warm eddy and the cold eddy. Essentially, our course was a very gradual arc to not only pick up those current features, but also in anticipation of the breeze coming around more to the southwest, so that we knew that we didn't have to sail hard on the wind. We could leave our sheets eased in anticipation of the fact that the wind was going to bend us around. In fact, that's exactly what happened. So the last 2 days we were going times low 7s, times seeing 8 knots, which was great for our boat, just jib reaching, a lot of that with number 3 and a reef in the main, and just pushing the boat very, very hard. And it was ideal conditions just to make tracks. I think where it sort of fell apart for us, the two places that we identified that we would have liked to have done something different was that little hitch we took in the stream where we were confused about the current. Fatigue was definitely a factor in that. I've crossed this patch of ocean, I don't know, 10 or 12 times now, so I was just perplexed as to why we were seeing current running in a direction that was opposite, but I have seen countercurrents north of the stream. There are these funny little fingers that occur. So that was one area where we probably could have saved an hour. The other place was the last day. Andrew mentioned we didn't have the right sails. We were going in that transition where we were fine when there was a lot of breeze, but as things lightened up, we didn't have quite enough power. We could have used something like a code 0 just to fill in the gap. We went to a spinnaker very late in the race for about half an hour. We were pretty close to the finish at that point. And it paid off, but we had a hole in the inventory between the tight jib reaching and the spinnaker reaching, and we figured we could have saved an hour over the last 24 hours, and an hour there and an hour there, we would have loved. So, thanks.